really plant my roots there as an adult so I can start to, kind of see things the way that my grandmother did. And I've been here ever since. But I can't leave. I can't escape. I'm
They
always
won't let you out.
no, Inglewood always pulling me back. So which I'm so happy that I'm rooted here because not only is it the place that I grew up, but I've met so many wonderful people that I would not have met otherwise, because it's very different living in a neighborhood that you grew up in as an adult. And, you just get to meet even more people. And I'm just really delighted to be a Inglewood resident and very proud.
Show us your Inglewood tattoo.
I was gonna do it this time, but I was like, maybe it's not appropriate.
No, it's I love it. I thought it was beautiful the last time we spoke, and I think it's awesome. So let's talk about your family's history in Inglewood. So you grew up in this beautiful home that your grandmother worked and saved for 7 years to purchase. Let's talk about, let's take a step back through time, to the day that your grandmother signed that mortgage or signed that deed.
Yeah.
Do you know why she ended up in Inglewood and not some of the other South or West Side neighborhoods that a lot of people, who came here on the Great Migration chose? Why Inglewood? What do you know about that decision?
So my mother, Rita Lewis, who my grandmother came here with when my mom was, just a little under 10 or around 10 years old. And my mother told me that we had some relatives who had already come to Chicago and was staying in Inglewood for, I think, temporary employment, or they were just visiting. And it was the neighborhood that my grandmother heard about and was told to, when you come to Chicago, there's a place to stay in Inglewood. And that's where she ended up purchasing a home because she stayed there temporarily with other people who were doing the same thing as her, moving to Chicago, trying to look for jobs. And it just so happened that it was the neighborhood of Inglewood. And so since she was staying there for 7 years, she just decided to make it her permanent home.
That's awesome. And you said that her best friend lived next door. Were they friends before your grandma got there, or did that friendship develop?
The friendship developed once she purchased the building. And like so many other people on the block, they had the same migration story. And so, Miss Patterson was a part of my whole entire childhood.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's great that you have those deep roots in Inglewood. So I'm not sure exactly how old you are, but I'm assuming that your earliest memories would have probably been like the early 80s. Being in that house in Inglewood.
40 years old.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Welcome to the 40s Club.
Yes, I love it.
It's a place to be. So now let me ask you something. Inglewood is 99% African American, right?
Yes.
Do you remember having any white neighbors when you lived in Inglewood as a child?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
Okay. So it had totally flipped by then.
Yeah, it had totally flipped. As a matter of fact, I had to, talk to Miss Patterson just a couple years ago when Folded Map was being turned into a stage play. And I connected with Miss Patterson to just let her know that I was including her in this. And I was talking to her about it. And, when she moved onto the block, not long after or before my grandmother, it was majority Black by that point. They only had a few remaining white residents. And that's what she told me, that it just changed like
overnight, probably.
Very quickly. Very quickly.
Yeah, that's a story. That's a story of the South Side that I think has not really been explored. The concept of white flight, because the South Side was majority white.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't. And so, I'm not sure if that's something that you discuss when you have these conversations about the Folded Map project with people on the North Side or who are not on the South Side. Does that ever come up as a topic?
Yes, it does. As a matter of fact, with people who are interested in participating in Folded Map and becoming map twins, when I start to talk to them about the project, they share their story with me. And sometimes the white participants often remember and recall that, oh yeah, my grandparents moved from the South Side to the suburbs. And so we begin to share our histories and realize, oh yeah, they were the white flight. And then also, just understanding how they were able to move to the suburbs. That's
Mhm.
the key. Not just, oh, white people didn't want to be around black people. No, they were oftentimes scared into having to leave. And then
Mhm.
they were provided with opportunities, the policies, the mortgages that were available to move and relocate to the suburbs. So
Mhm.
definitely a lot of people that I come into contact with through Folded Map, who are non-Black and are lifelong Chicago residents, they have the flip side history to the white flight.
Yeah, those, I would love to be able to sit somewhere and look at two people, the white 8-year-old, and the black 8-year-old who probably lived in the same house in the same year, and just
Mhm.
hear their stories about that experience and what they overheard from the adults. It's something that is absolutely fascinating to me.
It really is. And, I would hope that we start trying to gather that information because those people are living, they're older adults now.
Mhm.
People who even moved from the South Side to those predominantly white suburbs, they're, aging, but they're still here. And I definitely would love to be a part of kind of capturing those stories. A friend of mine whose husband, father, so her father-in-law, was actually part of the white flight. Her husband had told me this, and we were toying with the idea of me like interviewing him, because in addition to moving to the suburbs, he was also an owner of a currency exchange in the South Side neighborhood. And
Hmm.
so my friend's husband and I just had a really insightful conversation on how he felt being the like recipient of this kind of business that was like extracting money out of the neighborhood, and this is
Mhm.
what enabled him to go to college. So him
Yes.
reconciling that, that's a
Wow.
whole nother side.
Yeah, I mean, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. The fact that he was able to use his connection to Inglewood to go to college, whereas people like, your grandmother, and I remember during our last conversation, 80% of the Black people who bought homes in Inglewood used a contract that prevented them from building or taking equity out of their homes. They couldn't refinance. They
Yeah.
couldn't get a home equity loan to send somebody from college. So that begs the question: do you know whether or not your grandmother used one of these predatory contracts to acquire this house?
Yeah, fortunately, she didn't. But as Bruce Orenstein's documentary revealed, that it's so many people still living who did purchase their home and unfortunately lost them or struggled to keep them on land sale contracts. And since they have that amazing research of all of the homes that were purchased in Chicago, but I was focusing on Greater Inglewood, I've been driving around, photographing those homes and running into people who remember the neighbor that did, or to people that actually did. So these people are still here, and it's a difficult thing to talk about. There's a bit of like the documentary said, shame,
Yes.
embarrassment.
Yep.
These were prideful people who were coming from down south to Chicago up north to build a better life, and to get swindled like that is embarrassing. And
Hmm.
I know that it directly contributes to the low home ownership Greater Inglewood has now. There's probably a couple generations from those people who purchased homes on land sale contracts that probably said, "Don't you buy no house in, in
Yeah.
Greater
Right.
Inglewood because of what they did to me." So
Hmm.
it's all of that, not just the tools that were used to really take wealth and take advantage of those would-be Black homeowners, but just again, the psychology, the actual feelings a generation can have in response to being hurt like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I like have a laundry list of things I want you to do with Folded Map Project. So, right. So we got to do white flight. We got to talk about, interview people that had the contracts. Um, I also kind of want to think about the way that this phenomenon played out in like African American like arts and culture. I mean, you look at, you know, the play that Lorraine Hansberry wrote, you know,
Yeah.
it was all about this family with this insurance policy check trying to buy a home, right? Like just the idea
Yeah.
of finding a place to live, finding a home is a common theme in a lot of African American
That's so
literature from the time, and the
powerful.
poetry. You look at, I mean, you know, I watch Good Times, and you think about the opening theme song, you know, Easy Credit Ripoffs is
Yeah.
one of the lyrics in the opening theme. So it was something that was, you know, sort of unfortunately a commonly occurring theme
Yeah.
in what people live through and what people struggled with. And so we got to make sure that that's not forgotten.
Yeah. No, it's
So
true.
yeah, it's something that, you know, you can use, again, the Folded Map Project
Yeah. It just,
to
it
bring
just
into this new generation. Yeah.
keeps going, keeps going. It does. It's so much to unpack.
Right. Right. And there's
Definitely.
so much there. So talk to us about the first year of Folded Map Project. How did it unfold? Where did the idea come from? Who helped you? And
Yeah.
what were your greatest challenges and triumphs?
So I was about 20 in 2016. I was working at Growing Home, which is another amazing organization in Inglewood. They focus on urban agriculture, and they have an employment training program. And I was program manager there. And it was that specific year. I think I had been working there for about 4 years at that point, and it was the presidential election year. And you know, as I said in the film, I was just frustrated. And I had already been sitting on the idea of Folded Map, but this was prior to me having a name. It was
Okay.
just a project and concept and thought only. It's one of those ideas that I've had for a long time, but I just didn't really, you know, I wasn't in the space in my life where I figured out what it could be and how it could be used. It was just a concept that I had often played with because everybody would love to compare, or not compare, but would love to bring up the Red Line train, how that's like the best example of, you know, segregation in Chicago. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, there's so much more.
Yes.
So I was sitting on that idea until 2016. Just the frustration of that presidential election year just unlocked it for me. And that's when I decided, you know, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to start, you know, doing the actual mapping research because I had knew the streets I wanted to focus on. So I had just started, you know, my little journal, you know, jotting down notes.
Sure. Ideas. Yeah.
Exactly. And then in 2017, City Bureau, the newsroom, public newsroom, they introduced a fellowship for people to work on stories that were relevant to Chicago and equity. And this was the first year that they were going to invite a photographer as part of the fellowship. And so I applied. Now, mind you, I was working at Growing Home full time.
Okay.
So I knew that if I got accepted into this part-time fellowship, that I was going to have to make an employment decision. Like,
yes.
Oh my gosh, like, am I going to just leave my full-time job as a whole grown woman and mother of 2 kids?
Wow.
Or do I ask my employer, can I work part-time? So
Okay.
I was fully prepared to like not have a full-time job if I got accepted into City Bureau's fellowship. And they gave me the word that I was accepted. And I was like, oh my gosh, I will
Be careful what you ask for, right?
I know, but I knew this fellowship with their guidance, I was going to be able to carve out the time to actually work on this project, get their response, their input. And I really wanted that because I was like, I have to get this project out of my head. So once I was, you know, awarded the fellowship, here comes the hard conversation I have to have with my supervisor. And luckily, since they did know that, you know, I was an artist, I was working there when Inglewood had their Billboard Rising campaign. So they were familiar with, you know, my art and community work. And so I just went to my supervisor and told them, like, well, I got accepted into this fellowship.
Yeah.
Can I work part-time? I
Okay.
thought they were going to say no, and they say yeah. And
God
so I
bless
was
you. That's
able, yeah,
awesome.
oh, it's so great. So I was able to work part-time at Growing Home and then do part-time, the fellowship part-time. And so that was an 8-week fellowship. And I actually thought I was going to finish the whole project in 8 weeks. And by the 8th week, I had literally only just finished photographing the houses and had just started talking to residents. So it started in 2017 and it took a whole year till right before its exhibition. I was still finalizing the last interviews of the map twin. So it took over a year to, complete actually photographing and talking to people to exhibition. So that was the story of Folded Map, the creation process. But yeah, it included some difficult
Some
life
difficult
decisions.
decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. And it didn't seem difficult at the time because I knew I was like, I have to do it. I really don't care if I
Okay.
have to get unemployment. But
Sure. Okay. So let's talk about, so you you've got the Folded Map Project, which I'm very familiar with. You have also got Inglewood Rising, which is what, just photography, your photography work.
yeah, so Inglewood Rising was a larger campaign. Not only myself, but other Inglewood residents did part of Inglewood's Quality of Life campaign. We really wanted to uh, do some kind of community engagement that would help shift the narrative, the
Mhm.
ongoing narrative of Inglewood being so horrible.
Mhm.
And that is when residents raised money to purchase billboards in Inglewood for a year, 5 billboards, and they used my photography. And so that campaign was called Inglewood Rising. And then we also interviewed many Inglewood leaders and shared their story on the Inglewood Rising website. So that is what Inglewood Rising is.
Okay. Now you're also involved in Rage,
Yeah.
right? So you've got the Folded Map Project, Inglewood Rising, and Rage. Let's talk about
They
Rage
work
and
together.
how all, like how all of it works together, because it's all like
Yeah.
Inglewood centered, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so
All of
talk
it
to
is
us about
Inglewood.
Rage.
So Rage Resident Association of Greater Inglewood. I was fortunate enough to be one of the co-founders of Rage. This is, as the film explained to people, the baby of my sister friend and community partner, Aisha Butler. And it was really a way for concerned Inglewood residents to come together and meet. And so my continued involvement is as a thought partner with Aisha, and definitely we partner on a lot of community engagements, but the bulk of the management of Rage and everything that Rage decides to be a part of is the decision of Aisha Butler. She's the sole executive director now of Rage, and all of the other co-founders, we continue to stay involved through whatever our passions are. Mine continues to be arts and youth, so I'm always doing partnerships with Rage around that. And then also as a thought partner, Aisha definitely gets our opinions on initiatives and things that she's interested in incorporating in Rage or having Rage be a part of. So
Mhm.
it's all just one big family.
That's awesome. Awesome. I see, based on what I've seen from her social media, she's acquiring and rehabbing buildings in Inglewood. Is that part of
Yes.
her agenda?
So yes. So one of Rage is a part of this huge redevelopment initiative, and they were a Chicago finalist called Go Green on Racine. So this is not strange for Rage or Aisha Butler to be part of, because her passion has always been real estate. She's
Okay.
not only a homeowner, but she owns rental property. And prior to Rage, she was working at a real estate association. And then she just recently decided to become a small developer that is rehabbing homes. So she's working on her first home now, as well as being a part of Go Green on Racing with other amazing Inglewood
Mhm.
organizations to renovate and revive a closed Inglewood school and transform that whole space into reentry programs, a fresh market, produce market, just a beautiful space for the community that they can have access to all of the community resources as well as entertainment and food. And that's all on Go Green on Racine. So that's a project that Rage is a part of as a result of Aisha's passion of real estate.
That's great. I mean, you're working in Inglewood is, like a lesson to a lot of people who really, really want to make impactful and meaningful change, right? I mean, it's like you're so deep into it. I'm not sure how many other people would really, really have the level of commitment that you have. So I salute you for that. Now, let me ask you about the film that's streaming live today. So you've talked about your community work, your everything, but I didn't hear anything about film. So talk to me about how you ended up creating this wonderful documentary, graphic, whatever you want to call it.
I know.
Where did that come from? Like, how did that door open for you? Like, how did the filmmaker door open for you?
So it's just it's amazing how parts of your life journey will be used as a reference or influence the direction you go in with anything that you're interested in. And all of this, not even just the film, but the project is, me being rooted in Inglewood. And I think, and a lot of people, when you decide to, build roots in a location, whether it's, where you've grown up or where you currently lived or moved to, or, your passion in the arts, whatever it is, when you root yourself in that, it really allows an opportunity to build deeper relationships. And then also ideas that just come because it's your primary reference point. And so for me, I can say this folded map film could go all the way back to my mom being, an artist and a filmmaker. I grew up watching her and her friends through the Black Screenwriters Association. I was that little girl that was like had to get, dragged to the creative
meetings. Yeah.
I was doing my homework while her and her friends were working on scripts, and I literally saw her help produce and create a film short of one of her friends' scripts. So just the possibility of creating your own film short has been a reality for me. I didn't know that I was going to tap into it with Folded Map, but the possibility of it was revealed to me through my mom's passion, me growing up with that. So when Folded Map started to expand into, being a theater piece and, of course, an exhibition, a friend of mine who's also a creative, his name is Q Billa, he suggested that I make it into a film. And I was like, what? Because he's done a lot of videos, short music videos. And I was talking about, doing another version of Folded Map to make it more accessible to people who hadn't seen the play, who hadn't seen the exhibit. And I wanted to have another medium that it could be shared with. And he suggested a film. And I was like, that's going to be hard. And it was literally him who said, no, you have all of the footage. And you want to make it an animation, because that's how I started the conversation with him. I was like, I want to do something with animation.
Yeah.
And he suggested Keenan, who was the animator for Folded Map. And once Keenan and I connected, it was just, it seemed doable. He was like, oh yeah, I've never done anything that long. I've only been doing short 4-minute music videos, but I would love to work on this with you, because he's also from Inglewood. So once again,
so that was my next question. Are they also from Inglewood?
Q Billa is from the west side of Chicago. My close friend since high school, one of the west side kids that I met when I started going to Lane Tech. Sure. But just by coincidence, or whatever you would like to call it, Keenan grew up and was from Inglewood. And he really connected with the project. And so he was able to pour into it, his own personal history and his passion. So it really was a passion project between myself and Keenan, and then also Rob, who did the score.
Yeah, it's very personal. I mean, it's very intimate, it's very autobiographical. You know, we were joking earlier about the importance that people from Chicago place on where you went to high school, you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
So your extended exploration of, you know, those 4 years at Lane Tech, that was very Chicago, very South Side. I appreciated it, and it let me know that it was really, really, really from your heart. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Is this will this be the last film that we see from you? Are you working on your next
Well,
the next one?
yeah, of course, you know, my friends, especially David Robinson, Rob Smooth, the one who did the score, he's all ready to do part two. He was like, okay, now we need part two. We need the other part of your life.
And what do you think part two would look like? What would the theme be? Because it could be
Well,
it could easily be a documentary series, like
yeah,
series.
it could. Well, we wanted to explore some of Chicago's other history, you know, not only just land sale contracts, but maybe even the Chicago riots, talking about, you know, how where we live is connected to, you know, history even older than just redlining, you know, the beginning of it. So we were playing with some ideas of what it could be, but definitely connecting that to the second part of my life thus far, if you will.
Okay.
So it won't be.
Interesting.
They won't let me not do another film at this point.
Well, I'm gonna join. You know, I need to hook up with them because not only do I want you to do like 10 other, you know, subject matter issues for Folded Map. I mean, I really think that a documentary series centered on Inglewood would be a great gift to the world and not just the people of Chicago. I mean, it's something that, you know, people are talking about anyway. People are talking about Inglewood, which is going to sort of segue into the next, you know, part of this conversation. Inglewood is hot, right? It's in
Yeah.
newspapers. People are talking about it on TV news. You know, you go to the BBC website, and there are articles about Inglewood, Chicago, and what allegedly happened there, especially last weekend, last Saturday afternoon. I'm not going to put a label on it. I'm not going to, you know, editorialize. I just want to ask you,
Yeah.
as an Inglewood resident, what happened last Saturday afternoon? What happened?
So I'm just gonna go back to that Saturday, and I mean really, you know, Sunday as well, just hearing just through residents that, you know, I share social media with, that Aisha Butler shares social media with. It was residents on that block going live. So we were like just watching it live through someone's Facebook Live and seeing what had transpired. So we knew before the actual news arrived and before they shared the story to the public, we had already kind of saw and witnessed and pieced together what had happened on that specific block. Residents did call the police because they saw someone with a gun in that neighborhood, and the concerned residents on that block called the police.
Okay.
And so once the police arrived is when all kind of things happened that I don't know what's true and what's not. But one thing that we all know is true is that there was an abundance of police that kind of descended upon this one specific block in Inglewood as a result of an Inglewood resident calling the police because they saw someone with a gun.
Okay.
Whether or not the person shot back, or I don't know that part, but we all know it was over 100 police officers that came to that specific block and started to treat that entire block as if they were suspects and criminals. And it was actually those residents who called the police.
Right.
So I think that, you know, and it was isolated to that specific block because people, as the news started to, you know, report on it, people were texting me, asking me if I was okay. I stay not far, but it was literally isolated to that block. And I wasn't aware of anything going beyond that
That
block.
block.
The looting that people were saying was happening in Inglewood was not happening. So I didn't understand where that was coming from. So it was really interesting for me as an Inglewood resident to not only hear about it through residents in real time, but then also how the larger media outlets were reporting on it. And I was like, there wasn't looting in Inglewood. What are they talking about?
Yeah, right. Because
And
what,
then
what was unclear from where I sit, and I'm not in Inglewood, right? I've never lived there, so I really don't have any connections there. But what I couldn't understand is how it went from this incident on one block that was ambiguously reported to, thousands of people downtown allegedly responding to it and expressing their frustration because of it. Like, was there really a relationship between these two?
It was a manufactured relationship, but that's for me. It's a teachable moment for the public, because since then, because we all knew that if they were going to arrest the looters, which they did, they arrested over 40 of them. I was like, okay, once they go through processing or whatever, we're going to find out where they live, and that story did come out. None of the 40 something people arrested were residents of Inglewood. So it's a great learning opportunity for the larger public to understand how even the bias of the media connecting it to an incident in Inglewood really, it's problematic.
It's awful. It's
awful.
awful.
People literally started to talk about it as if it was already proven that those two incidents were connected and that they were residents of Inglewood, when now we know it wasn't.
It wasn't.
Once again, people should really think about how they interpret the media, and really think about how to question the media and gain their own knowledge and information, because that was a horrible assumption based on
it's a horrible assumption, and sadly I think a lot of people are still, based on what they saw in the media and what they read in the newspapers, they're still placing what happened downtown at the feet of Inglewood, right? And they were totally unrelated. And I'm happy that you were able to affirmatively state that, because that's what I believe. I never believed that they were related, and so it's just tragic. And so it's,
and for
there's a
people
lesson
who do
there.
believe it's related, they need to think about really why. Why do you think that? Why do you think that these two separate incidents are connected? And the truth of why you think that will possibly reveal some of the internal work that needs to be done. Because just because you hear this about Inglewood does not mean that you have the right to make a huge connection like that to a larger, more devastating issue in downtown. Like, how are you going to do that? And that's really part of the problem that we're going to be struggling with as Chicagoans, trying to untangle segregation. It's literally the thought process, the biases, the stereotypes,
the assumptions that people make, and assumptions inform actions, they inform decisions, they inform policy. People use them to justify what they do or what they don't do, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about segregation in Chicago, a lot of it is driven by, as far as I'm concerned, faulty beliefs, bad information. And I think
you can always blame the bad kid, right? You can always blame the bad neighborhood.
There's always a scapegoat. And so right now, to a large extent, Inglewood is a scapegoat. At least Inglewood was the scapegoat for what happened downtown last weekend.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about stigmatizing neighborhoods, Inglewood may be at the forefront right now in Chicago, but there are a lot of Chicago neighborhoods that were sort of like the straw man for a lot of bad assumptions and a lot of media stereotypes. Woodlawn, carried a lot of assumptions. Bronzeville, was a place, that was beyond respectability for many, many years, especially when you had those large numbers of public housing units. Because I was living in that part of Bronzeville, in the 80s,
Oh,
when it wasn't even called Bronzeville, right? When it just was this, the place where people don't go, though it was full of people.
yeah. And
Bridgeport to a certain extent,
oh
let's not just think about, African American stereotypes, but
yeah.
Bridgeport carried a lot of negative stereotypes,
Yeah,
in
I
terms of
can
like
remember
white
being a young
poverty.
girl and
Mhm.
being told don't go to Bridgeport, and then
Right.
also don't go past Western or
That's
60 East
right.
Side.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's real, and it's something that you're burdened with when you grow up. I think on the south side of Chicago, I think that people who move here who don't grow up here can be a lot more open-minded about it. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I believe that a lot of the gentrification
Hmm.
that's changing the character of these stigmatized neighborhoods and making them more difficult for low and moderate income African Americans to live in. I think a lot of it is driven by people who are naive and
Hmm.
don't necessarily haven't lived the history. So, they don't really understand the implications of what it means for, new upscale housing in Woodlawn, new upscale housing in Bronzeville.
Yeah.
So when you talk about what people do believe or what they don't believe, what they know, what they don't know, driving gentrification, do
Hmm.
you believe that gentrification will be an issue in Inglewood in anytime soon, like in our lifetimes?
Definitely in our lifetime. I think it's closer to happening now than when I used to hear about Inglewood's going to get gentrified like 20 years ago.
Hmm.
People have been saying that for so long, but
They have. They
the
have.
reason they've been saying that for so long, which I totally understand, is because our descent into this moment in time where we have all of the closed schools, low home ownership,
Hmm.
we're trying to get a business corridor again. Like everything that could go wrong with the neighborhood has been incrementally happening in Inglewood since the 50s and 60s.
Hmm.
So around the, 80s, when it was at its height of actual gang violence, because a lot of people believe that it's gang violence now, and it's not. It was more
They
so in
don't
the 80s.
remember. That's right.
Yeah, like it's actually better, and the gun violence these days is really actually more domestic, but
Mhm.
people don't understand crime statistics, so that's a whole nother
Okay.
story. But
Okay.
ever since the 50s and 60s, it's just been incrementally getting worse and worse. And so at each decade, I've heard people say, oh, Inglewood is going to be gentrified. But the reason we say that is because we know the city at each decade has not helped curb any of this that's been happening to Inglewood. And so when you have that kind of neglect, you can only assume that it's for some larger purpose that doesn't benefit you as a
Hmm.
resident.
Hmm.
And, historically in Chicago, we don't have Black neighborhoods that get gentrified by uh, young white professionals. But that is what people think about Inglewood now, because we've hit a point where we're, economically devastated as a
Hmm.
community, that something has to happen.
Right.
And the city isn't, it waited until Inglewood has so many vacant lots till we have all of these closed schools to invest in, Southwest, which was an initiative that the mayor announced prior to the pandemic.
Hmm.
So now it's like, okay, well, who are you doing it for? Because now we only
Yeah.
have
After everybody's gone, who is this
right
for?
such a huge population that left. So it does beg the question, whether it's valid or not. It does beg the question of, will Inglewood get gentrified? And if it does, by who? Is it
Hmm.
going to be Black professionals? Is it going to
Hmm.
be young white professionals?
Hmm.
Who is it going to be gentrified by? But
Hmm.
who is going to be gentrified by isn't for me the most immediate, because I'm thinking about like structurally, like as a city, why do new residents have to come here for for our city to want to invest in it? And that
Right.
to me is the base issue and problem with gentrification, is that
Hmm.
we we don't just hold our elected officials accountable for the fact that you shouldn't be investing in a neighborhood just because a specific population comes in, which usually is young white professionals.
Yeah.
Because if we use the example of Bronzeville, Black professionals gentrified Bronzeville so many years ago, but yet
Yes.
their income still has not gotten them to have the amenities that their neighborhood
Hmm.
that their income actually
Would
justifies.
suggest, yes, would support.
So
Right.
what is that about? Because Bronzeville definitely has been gentrified, but why have those middle income residents just now getting like a Mariano's? Like,
Yeah.
what is it? So now it's the question of how does the city decide how to help or how to direct businesses into certain neighborhoods?
Hmm.
How does the
Hmm.
city decide, which neighborhoods should be invested in, or how to create opportunities for larger businesses to come to certain neighborhoods? Because
Hmm.
that's the question. Like,
Yeah.
talk about gentrifiers, but I want to talk about the reason gentrifiers are even part of the conversation is because
Right.
one
Right.
problem with
What's priming the pump? Right. What's priming the campus for them, the canvas for them to show up?
wherever young white
Exactly.
professionals go.
Right. Okay,
And
so that leads me to the next question, which you and I, sort of, have sort of hinted at and discussed a little bit. What does fair and equitable reinvestment in Inglewood look like to you? Okay, so we've discussed gentrification, and I'm glad that you moved away from gentrification to policy and City of Chicago priorities. What does fair and equitable reinvestment look like to you? In your opinion, where should capital, financial, social, and cultural be directed in Inglewood to make it fair and equitable?
well, we were talking about just to give people a real time example of what it could look like,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just throwing out all of these ideas and possibilities in real time. What it looks like is investing in the Go Green on Racine initiative. This is a huge, carefully thought out initiative by organizations involved in Inglewood, Iman, E.G. Woods, Teamwork Inglewood, Rage, who are trying to help create a vision of what investment looks like, and they've packaged it into Go Green on Racine. So that is a real initiative that is spelled out, has a website. Everybody could go look at how wonderful it is.
Mm-hmm.
That is what the city should be investing in. Like, or helping assist that
Mm-hmm.
kind of initiative become a reality, because we don't need to think of any new ideas. We don't. We have
Mm-hmm.
a concrete one right now,
Mm-hmm.
and it definitely should be assisted in becoming a reality by the city.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's what it is.
Got it.
I see these organizations and these individuals, these committed residents, trying to push this initiative forward. And I don't understand why this is an initiative that the city wouldn't help. They don't even have to come up with a plan. It's literally
Mm-hmm.
handed to them
Mm-hmm.
that not only this community, but the South Side in general can benefit from,
Mm-hmm.
And so I just really want us to start, as residents, um, really holding our elected officials accountable, and helping them see that it's residents and organizations in these very neighborhoods that need assistance. They are doing the work and they just need support. So that to me is what investment, real time, present day
Mm-hmm.
investment looks like. Tapping into these organizations that have been doing the hard work for
Right,
years
that are organic, that are in Inglewood, and
and have
it's right. It's
brilliant ideas.
sure, it's homegrown. It's not some urban development corporation from New York City or Los Angeles that wants to come and impose something, which often you see in gentrification. That the idea that it's homegrown, that it's people like you
Exactly.
from Inglewood who have committed to, made a lifetime commitment to Inglewood is super important to me. That would give it the advantage in terms of seeking out capital. I think that's awesome. So let's get back into politics a little bit. So as you pointed out in the film, Inglewood maybe has a little bit more city council representation than it needs.
Yes.
I'm not being critical. I'm not calling out any names, but like who can spearhead, the change in terms of consolidating political power in
Uh,
Inglewood in one place? And do you think that that is the best approach, because sometimes consolidated power is abused. So talk to me about
Yeah.
your perspective, how you'd like to see Inglewood represented in Chicago City Council.
Yeah, trying to change a system while it's still like moving forward is very hard. So I I wouldn't even suggest that we try to figure out how to get one or two aldermen, because that's above me. I want us to focus on how and to learn why we even have 5, 6 aldermen, because that is also part of the history, and the reason that we do is population loss, redistricting, all of those things that seem just,
Random, with
yeah.
no context. Yeah.
So I would prefer for us, as Chicagoans, to take a moment and learn the history of how Inglewood ended up with 5, 6 aldermen, because it has not always been the case. Now, moving forward, we have the aldermen that we have, and we really do have some great aldermen. And this is the first year prior to the pandemic that all of the aldermen of Inglewood like came together to talk to each other and to talk to the public. That has like never happened before. And so, we do have new aldermen like Alderman Coleman. She's new, and she's definitely advocating
Yeah,
for a
she's
lot
very
of.
dynamic. Yeah, she's very
Exactly.
dynamic and progressive. Yes.
Exactly. So, kind of having that new blood in this as a representative, is as an aldermanic representative, is key and necessary. And so I think what she's doing, what the other aldermen are doing by communicating with each other, and also having these relationships with organizations in Inglewood, is good. It's necessary, and it's something that hasn't really happened as cohesively in the past. And so I think we are seeing a transformation occur. I don't think we're going to see Inglewood having 1 to 2 aldermen in the near future. But
Okay.
what I am confident in is that you'll see our existing aldermen working together, and also really pushing back on our mayor about what the priorities of Greater Inglewood should be. And that's something I feel that we haven't had as much of in the past from all of our aldermen, but we do now.
Excellent, excellent. So it's 6:50. So let's take the next 10 minutes or so to open up our conversation to some questions and comments from our audience members. I know that one of your objectives of the Folded Map Project is to get specifically Black and white Chicagoans in a conversation about segregation in the
All
city
of
of
us,
Chicago, right?
Latino, Asian, Black and
Everybody, right?
white.
Beyond the binary of Black and white, let's talk about,
Those
why
are the
Chicago
extent.
is
Those are the
segregated.
two extremes, though. Yes.
Exactly. So we got a question from Diana Clegg. She submitted a question through YouTube, and Diana's question is, "What do you think are the best steps to take to try to desegregate Chicago?"
It has to be multifaceted. It has to be everything that we're already doing now. Part of sustaining hope is knowing that everything we're doing now is what we need to do to change how our city looks, how our city operates. Don't feel like it's something that we need to create. We are all doing it. And what that includes is, voting to elect new aldermen, or aldermen that represent what we feel as residents. And then also to do protests, to visit other neighborhoods, to challenge what you've been told about other neighborhoods, and go see for yourself through relationships. So it's not just going to visit other neighborhoods, but get to know other Chicagoans who don't live in your neighborhood. However it can be done, whether if it's through you pursuing a passion you have. You might be a musician. Okay, you're going to connect with other musicians. I'm pretty sure it's going to be musicians from the South Side. Go visit to where they play at on the South Side. It's just as simple as that on a resident level, because if you are an informed resident, you'll be able to distinguish what you hear in the larger media outlets. you'll be able to say, actually, I was visiting Tonika in Inglewood the other day, and they just did
Right.
this huge art event, and I don't know if all of those people were Inglewood. You'll be able to gain your own reference point. And
Mhm.
so I think all of us being able to do that will make it more difficult for people to just, or institutions to just give us some blanketed perception of some neighborhood. So we really, as residents, have to just learn how to collect our own personal information. And I personally think that's through relationship building, finding a way. And it's not just me saying North Siders come to the South Side. No, I'm saying South Siders also go to the North Side, see how over resourced it is, so you can see what you are entitled to as a
Mhm.
South Side resident. So you can question, wait. You mean to tell me they have decorated garbage cans on each block? Who did?
Yes.
Is it the alderman? Is it the city? Why do they have
Mhm.
flowers in their median and we
And
don't?
we don't. We have weeds. Mhm.
Exactly. So it's all of it. I think we just need to start talking more to each other. And quite frankly, I do think the protests are helping, because it is not
Mhm.
just Black people in the protests. Those are
It's
some
very diverse. They're
very diverse.
extremely diverse.
Exactly. And then also what I think we need to do is start listening to our youth. We have a huge young population in Chicago from 13 to, you know, 29, and they're going to be older Chicagoans, and they have a completely different perspective and approach on life and interacting with each other that we need
Mhm.
to amplify,
Agreed.
and we need to talk to them, because actually they're doing the thing, they're interacting with each other across race,
That's
across
right.
neighborhood.
And across class,
Yes.
which is something that has definitely been an issue for me. On top of race, you've got
Okay.
class. So a
Oh,
lot of
class,
what looks
yeah.
like racial segregation is
Is
class
class.
segregation.
You're right.
If you're you grew up very, very poor in Chicago, the opportunity to spend time in the home of a wealthy person,
Yeah.
where does that opportunity come from? So that's something that people really, 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 I think, could benefit from Folded Map Project. We have a question here from Carmisha Kashan, submitted on YouTube as well. Carmisha said, she just viewed the documentary. Now I want to go meet my map twin.
I
How
have
can she meet? How can she meet her without just showing up and knocking on
I
somebody's door and saying, "Hey"?
I got you, girl. I got you. So
Okay.
just in a couple weeks, myself and my Folded Map partner, Dr. Maria Creason, and my Folded Map just visual guide and graphic designer, J&J Creative, we've been working to create Folded Map Action Kit. And what that is, it's a collection of exercises that we are inviting people to do. One of them includes figuring out what your map twin neighborhood is in a very general sense. So we're not just only focusing on exact addresses, because we want to expand it so a lot more people can participate. And so identifying your map twin neighborhood, and then running this list of errands that we're asking you to run in your map twin neighborhood and sharing back your experience. Some of those errands include going to buy an organic apple in your map twin neighborhood, go buy toiletries or lotion, because that's a very different experience.
Okay.
Go take out $20 at an ATM. So we're asking people to visit your map twin neighborhood by doing these errands. And once you do that, you'll be able to experience that neighborhood like that resident without necessarily meeting your exact map twin. But it is my hope that in doing some of these exercises, which you will be doing, with other residents of that neighborhood, maybe you might meet somebody, and that could still be your map twin, even if it's not the exact street. It's your map twin because it's your map twin neighborhood. So by doing actual regular resident activities in another neighborhood, you're going to meet regular residents. And so that is my hope with this Folded Map Action Kit, that it can be used as a tool to help people enter into neighborhoods without the biases and stereotypes that
Yes.
we all know have been projected on to
Mhm.
people,
Mhm.
because I don't want to.
It's a way of humanizing the experience
Yeah, of
at a
walking
very
in
basic
your
level,
yeah,
sure,
walking
for
in
the
your
things that are
residence, your
universal.
neighborhood, your
Mhm,
neighbor's shoes, walking in your
mhm,
neighbor's shoes, and being able to understand some of the challenges or how easy it is for
mhm.
them to be able to um, have access to these things. So the Folded Map Action Kit will be coming out. It'll be available for download on the website in a couple of weeks.
Great.
And if you're interested in participating in that way, because we want people to share back their experience, because we're also going to create some kind of platform where people will be able to read and see what people's experience was and what they think as a result of it.
Okay, very briefly, we've got 2 minutes left. Where can people see this film again? Where and how will it be available next time?
It will be available on Folded Maps website as well. It will be available for download, but with a small donation. Folded Map just became a nonprofit this year, and this will be, yeah,
Congratulations.
thank
Yeah,
you.
that's
So
awesome.
this will be a resource that we want educators and families to be able to have access to, and also, contribute what they can. There will be a suggested donation for educators and the general public, but that's how it'll be available on Folded Maps website.
Mhm.
And yeah, so probably also within a couple weeks. I was just like texting the graphic designer, like, how can we do this? But we're gonna be making it available.
That's awesome. Tonika, thank you so much. It's 6:59. I want to cut off as close to 7 as possible. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment to the
Mm,
South Side of Chicago. Thank you for your commitment to Inglewood. And thank you for putting all the work and time and energy and love that you did into this film. It's wonderful.
thank you.
I look forward to seeing the documentary series on Netflix. I'm just going to
Yeah,
throw that out there.
the Map Twin
Um,
docu-series.
yeah, the Folded Map, the docu series. I want to thank our audience for joining us. I want to thank our streaming partner, Seed and Spark. Again, this is the second time that we've worked with you, even in a pandemic. We just couldn't stay away from you and your work.
Thank you.
And when the world gets back to, a place where people can interact and we can sit in theaters and sit across from each other and have conversations, I hope that this will continue. I hope this energy and dynamic can continue, because we really, really value your work. We literally created the Southside Film Festival for films like yours, and we're honored that you allowed us to be a part of your journey with this film.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be invited and to be a part of this.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.